Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is going to be the next part of our food app series. So in the previous video we implemented the food detail screens, and now we will implementing the cart flows. So just one thing before doing anything, the first thing that you'll need to do is that you need to pull the latest changes from the server every single time when you are working on a new implementation. Make sure that you have an updated server code so that you can easily implement and you don't face any issues, since it's a work in progress. So you'll have to keep these things updated. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to get over here into this food detail screen. This is basically currently just a screen, it doesn't have any view model. So what we will do is that we'll create a Kotlin class, and now let's just call it food details view model. Okay, and this is going to be a class with an inject. Okay, and it will be a constructor. Also, let's just implement extend it from a view model class. So that's important. And other than that, what we will do is that we'll set up a hilt view model as a annotation. Okay, and now over here what I need is that I need the food API over here to access it. Okay, so that's done. Right now what we'll do is that we'll create a couple of things. For example, food details UI state. Okay, and now what it will be doing is that it will say, let's we have a loading state, we'll have a success state. We are not gonna use that in term for success. In fact, this is going to be an object class. Okay, and also let's just create one more class that says nothing, food details UI state. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing that we need to do is that we need to create another shield class, and that is going to be the navigation events. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to get rid of that. Let's create a data class and call it show error dialog. Okay, now the show error dialog will be basically taking a message. Other than that, I think what we need to do is that data class go to cart, go to cart, and it's going to be not data class, sorry, let's make it an object. Okay, so these are the two things. If needed, I'll add further stuff into this. So now the other thing is that we will be creating a private wall underscore UI state that's equals to mutable, that is going to be mutable state, going to be mutable state flow of food UI state, and this is going to be nothing. Okay, that's one thing. And then we will be using this as state flow. So that's one thing. Another one is that we will be using shared flow for events, and that is going to be event is equals to mutable shared flow. Okay, and this is going to be uh, food details events, right? It doesn't need anything else. And along with that, we will be using as shared flow. So these are the common stuff that we need. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to call it add to cart, and this add to cart is going to be the section that we will be implementing. Other than that, there are a couple of more things, like I'll be creating a private wall um, quantity quantity is equals to mutable state flow of integer, and the default value is going to be 0. And now I'll be using this. Okay. Oh, and the next thing that we need to do is that you will be using increment, and also will be using decrement quantity. So that's something quantity, and over here we'll be using dot value minus equals to one. So these are the basic methods that we will be implementing. And now inside this add to cart, what we need to do is that we need to get a couple of things. For example, one thing that we need is a restaurant ID. So restaurant ID, that is going to be a string, and food item ID also, it's going to be string. So these are the two things that we need. Okay, so that's done, right? Now, before implementing this, what I need to do is that I need to get over here into this food API section, and I need to set up the endpoint. And how do we set up the food endpoint? So there are like simple way. One way is that you can go to your backend code and look for the cart routes. So wherever you see this cart route, you can just open that class and check what are the routes for that. And what I can see over here is this slash routes slash carts. So that is the endpoint that I'll be needing. So I'll just copy that, go to my Android Studio and create a post. So just make sure that you use a post, and inside that I'll be using slash cart. Okay, that's one thing. And then you will be using suspend function, add to cart, right? And over here what we'll be using, let's say we have a um, add to cart request object. Right now we don't have that, so we'll use somewhat like that, request. Okay, and make sure to use a body tag along with that as well. And in return, what we need is that we need to get some sort of response from that. And what response is this specific request gonna give us? You can check that by getting over here that it returns just ID and a message. So basically what you can do is that you can create a response message that give you these two things. So what I'm gonna do is that I'll create a response for that as well. Okay, now we have these two things. We don't have the models for that. So to set up the models, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go to the data class, and inside that I'll create a Kotlin class. It's going to be a data class, right? And this data class is going to be add to cart request. Okay, so now this is something, and now inside that what we need is that we need these three things: the restaurant ID, the food item ID, and the quantity. And now you need to make sure that the IDs matches. So I have this cart request over here, and over here it's a menu item ID. So make sure that you use menu item ID rather than the food item ID, and then the rest of the two things are the way they are. This is the cart request, and you can do the same thing for the add to cart response. And this is also going to be a data class, so just make sure to use this the way it is. Now over here what it's gonna do is that it will be, one thing is the string ID and the other one is wall message string. So these are the two things that this specific class is gonna return, the specific API gonna return. So I'll just import both of them. And now I have this thing set up, right? So we have the setup, and we'll go back to the food details view model. Now over here what I'm gonna do is that I'll implement that. So the first thing that I need to do is that I need to set up the coroutine context over here. Now we are in the inside the coroutine scope. Over here now we'll be using UI state dot value is equals to UI state dot loading. This is basically the way when it will be loading. Then we will be saying respon response is equals to API call, and this is basically going to help us with setting up everything. Now over here what we will be doing is that we'll be using add to cart, and inside that let's call it add to cart request, and that request is going to take all these things that we have. So that's pretty much what it did. Restaurant ID came from the method, menu item also came from the method, and the quantity was the state that we had. So that's pretty much what we have. And now what I'll do is that we'll say when, and we'll set up the response. Now what we are gonna do is that we'll say API response dot success. We will do this if it's a error case. We'll do this, and else we will be using it as an exception. So in that case, we'll be saying unknown error. Okay. So now what happened over here? The first thing is that in case of success, we just updated that state to success case, and we emitted that specific thing. I think in terms of UI, we don't have a success state like in a specific way. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna change it to nothing, and I'm going to take that specific state out, so lesser states. Let's just get rid of the so when the basically the item is being added to cart, what we want to do is that we want to show a message to the user. And for that, so now I'll go over here and let's add object on add to cart. Okay, so now over here what we are going to do is that we are not going to say to go to cart. In fact, we say on add to cart. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have, I think. And now the next thing that we need to do is that we need to go to our screen, UI screen, and make the changes that are required. So the first thing that we need is that we need a view model over here, and that is going to be health view model, and it's just going to be initialized through health. And now this counter is gonna be coming from view model dot quantity dot collect as state with life cycle, right? And this is done. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is that I'll say UI state is equals to view model dot UI state. And one more thing that I want is that I want to say launched effect, and that is going to be unit. Okay, and then this is basically gonna be, we will be registering the view model dot event dot collect latest. Now over here what we will be doing is that we will be saying that okay, if like a specific event is there, like add to cart, show error dialog, and if like we have is food event dot on add to cart, show error, go to cart. So like these kind of things that we need, we don't need these specific things specifically right now. I will be doing it later on. So now we have these things, right? So for now what I'm gonna do is that I'll say that we can make a toast over here, make text on like item added. If it's not working, what we can do is that we can take a context from there, and for error case we'll be using this uh, fail to add to cart. Or you can also take a message, like if you want you can take the message from there, so you don't need to add this. Okay, and go to cart means that we will be navigating to cart, and since we don't have an art cart screen right yet, so we'll just keep it the way it is. Now we have a count, we have a UI state, and we have a events that are basically set up, right? And now what we have over here is that now we cannot update these counter. In fact, what we'll do is that we will be using increment quantity for plus, and we will be using decrement quantity for minus. So this is important to use it this way. And what else do we have? I think one more thing that we need to do for these is that we can make it a circle shape, so that the edges, when basically user is clicking, the edges don't show. So I think this should be helping with that. And yeah, this is done. And now over here, you can see that we have this view model section on all button click section. And then when user click on that, what we'll do is that we'll say add to cart. Now, from where do we get the restaurant ID? We know that we have a food item already passed to this, and it have a restaurant ID and a food item with a ID. So if I'm not wrong, yeah, just make sure that you use the correct. Okay. Now, this is basically also done, and this is almost like pretty much what we needed. Just one more thing that I need to do before we can do anything, and that is we will basically create one more variable and call it is loading is equals to um, remember mutable state of false, because initially it will not be loading. And now when the state is loading, we'll set it to loading, right? Else it will be false. So that's pretty much what we will be doing with this. Now over here, in this specific section, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna use animated visibility for this case, and infuse is loading dot value for this, and add these values to this. Okay. Now this is for in case like when we have the visible, like it's not loading. So we also need to make sure that this is basically only be visible when it's like there. And another one when basically the visibility animated visibility for is loading. So when it's loading, what I'm gonna do is that we'll be using a circular progress indicator, right? And we also use, let's say, modifier dot size, and use 24 dp. Okay. So what basically will happen is that when user click on this, it will become a progress indicator, and until it's loading, and once the loading is done, it will get back to the previous state. And also we don't want this to be clickable. So to make sure that when it's loading it's not clickable, we also need to make sure that it's enabled is equals to when the value is not loading. This means that it will be only be enabled when it's uh, not loading. And I think that's pretty much okay. So pretty much a lot of things that we have done. Now let's just try to run this and see when we try to um, add item, what happens. Okay, so now it's running. Let's just see what happens. Okay, it's showing me empty, and the reason is that the server is not running. Server is running. Okay, yeah. So one more thing that I missed, and that is that make sure when you are trying the emulator, the IP is the one that you're basically use for emulator, which is 10.0.2.2. And now let's just rerun it again. Okay, now it's this time. Okay, now you can see that we have this. Now let's go to Pizza Palace, and we have all these products that we can use. Let's add this tikka pizza and try to add a couple of items. You can see that it's clicking. Also the ripple effect is now inside that, and there is something wrong with this, but we can look into that later on. Let's just try to add the item. Okay, so when I click on that, it fails like with an empty message. It doesn't show me the message, and I think I know the reason. Okay, so the reason is that if you go to the backend code, look over here that it uses an authenticate tag, which means that it needs a JWT, a token that we have been storing like when we were doing the authentication flows, right? So to fix that, what I'm gonna do is that I'll get over here to the network module. Okay, Now over here, what we will do is that we'll create another provide method and call it function provide client. Okay. And what it's gonna return is that it will be saying an OK HTTP that we will be using. Now over here, what we will be doing is that we'll say OK HTTP client dot builder, and now we'll be using client dot add interceptor. Okay, and then we will be using the chain request. So once we have that, what we will be doing is that we will be using wall request chain request new builder, and then authorization. This is the basically is going to be the part of the header. Now this is important that we don't have right anything like that. So what we will be doing, that will save session, boot up session, and now from session we can take the token. Okay, so just make sure to add this interceptor, and in at last what we will be doing is that we'll say client.build. So this is pretty much what it will be doing. And now over here we will be using client as a retrofit client, right? So for retrofit client we'll be using client as an OK HTTP client and add this client into this. Okay, so now basically what we did is that we added an interceptor. Interceptor is basically something, let's say when you make a web call, for every web call, the interceptor will intercept that request. And if you want to like make any changes to that specific request, it will do it. In our case, since we want to add the header, so it will get add a header. Let's say you want to add something to the request other than the header, you can add it over here as well. These interceptor basically help with all these kind of things. Okay, and there are like other kind of interceptor as well. For example, let's say we want to log all the requests that we get. So in that case we will be using something like this. Okay, now what I did is that I added this logging interceptor, which will basically help me log every request in the logcat. So these are the things that you can do it with this specific interceptors. And since we use hilt, so the provide will basically help us with all these things. Now let's just run this again, and this time I hope will be fixed. Okay, now we got there. Let's just go there. We'll be using the same tikka pizza. Try to add, and now you can see that it says add to cart, item added to cart, which means now the item is being added to cart. Although the our button kinda looks bad, so we'll just fix that. I think the reason is this specific section, since we use inside that, what we need to do is that we need to make it a raw as well, this one raw as well, and add it inside the raw. I think now when we try, it should fix this issue that we have. Okay, now let's just try with some different products. Now one, like there are a couple of things that we need to fix. The first thing is this specific zero. We should not, it should not be zero. Like it should start from one and it should not go to zero. So when decrementing, we need to make sure that we are not like using anything lesser than one. So you can add these kind of checks into that as well. So for example, if like it's equals to no, sorry, if it's equals to 1, what we are gonna do is that we'll return, so that like it doesn't go, sorry, it should be for decrement. And for increment you can like say if it's like max value. So let's say if quantity dot value equals to, or let's say keep 5 for that. So at one time you can add 5 items. So it's something like this will help you with that. And also the default value should be 1, so that it never go down that, go lesser than 1. Okay, so yeah, these are a couple of adjustments that we can do. Now since the items are being added to the cart, what we want to do is that we need to check how our cart looks like. We need to implement that. So now what, there is one more thing that we need to do, and that is basically to show a success dialog or a error dialog when basically there is some sort of a when the item is being added, and from there we will also allow the user to go to the cart screen. So to do that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the existing functionality that we have been using for okay. So now what I'm going to do is that I'll say wall show success dialog is equals to remember mutable state of false, and we'll also use wall show error dialog that is also going to be false. Okay, now we'll get over here, and over here I'll just replace this specific toast message to say show success dialog dot value is equals to true, and over here this will be changed to show error dialog dot values to true. So these are the two things that we will be using. And now like at the bottom of that specific composable, what we need to do is that we will be using that if show success dialog dot value is true, then we will be showing a specific dialog. And you know that for that what we need to do is that we need to make a modal bottom sheet. And now over here it will be saying that on dismiss request, what we are gonna do is that we'll say show success dialog dot value is equals to false. That's important to do. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to create the content. Okay, and one more thing that we need to do is that we need to opt in for that. And now over here, what I'm going to do is that we'll be using a dialog for specific things. So let's say we'll be using a column item added to cart, and then we'll be using close, let's say, let's call it okay. And also we along with the okay, let's just create one more button and add on top of that. We'll be using go to cart. Okay, so now these are the two buttons that are there, and we'll also be using these buttons to be fully covering the, so we'll be using modifier dot. So now over here there's one more thing other than on click what we'll be using is that we'll be saying modifier fill max width, and before that let's add some padding horizontal as 16.dp. So this is important to be added, and we'll be using this over here as well, right? So yeah, now we have these two buttons. This one is going to be this is for success, and when like a success button is clicked over here, right? So in this case we are gonna say view model dot go to card. We don't have that functionality yet, so we can just create a function. And now over here we will be using view model scope, view model scope dot launch, and we will emit that event. Okay, now let's just go back over here, and this time again let's say if the case is the other one, so it's show error dialog dot value. In that case we will be using modal bottom sheet and call it show error dialog dot value is equals to false. And now inside that we are gonna be using basic dialog. The title is going to be error. Description could be UI state dot value as error. Okay, and that's gonna be taking we'll be going taking gonna taking him we'll take that message from there. And now once that is succeed, we'll just close that dialog. So I think that's pretty much what we want. Now let's just try to run this and see what happens. Okay, now let's just go to a specific product, and you can see it says add to cart, go to cart, and then we'll also have the other button as well. And let's say there is some sort of error. Let me just close the server and try again. And now let's just when I just run it, it will say that error. There is an unknown error, and you can just click OK, and then it will go away. So that was basically how we will be adding the products to cart. We need to fix that button. So let's just fix that. To fix that, what we need to do is that over here, this vertical arrangements needs to be added over here to this. Now when you look into that, it should hopefully fix. Okay, need to run the server. Let's just set the server back. Now you'll see, okay, the button is now fixed. Okay, so we are pretty much done with this, and now what we will do is that we'll implement the cart screen, right? So to implement the cart screen, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to go to our API section over here into the like this section over here. And what you need to do is that you need to have a couple of things. You need a token that's gonna be taken when you are making a web call. So let's say if I filter it, you'll see that I have this token over here. So make sure that you have this token. You can just copy it from the logs, or if you like log in, you'll also get that at the time of login as well as a logs. So take that token, go to Postman and type in this something like this HTTP localhost 8080/cart, but make sure that it's a GET request. Okay. Now inside the header section, you need to make sure that you need like you go to the header section, go to the authorization, and over here you'll just paste this. Okay. Now once you do that and you send it, and you'll get something like this. Now, this response is quite big, but there are two things. One is this item section, that is an array, and it contains the items of the cart. And the second one is the checkout details that contains the amount on like what kind of amount it should take. So what you need to do is that you need to copy all this whole JSON, and once you copy that, you can get back to this specific and back to Android Studio and go to the models class. And then inside that model, what you need to do is that you need to go over here and select this Kotlin data class file from JSON. This is basically a plugin you can download from the marketplace. So you get over here, you paste the whole JSON that you have copied, and what you can do is that you can make it cart response. So once you do that, you'll just generate that, and once that is generated, you'll see that you'll get a couple of things. For example, the cart response has a list of item. We need to make sure that we refactor it to a proper name. What I'm gonna do is that I'll rename it to cart item so that it's like understandable. Okay, and now when I get over here, you see that we have a checkout detail and the items with cart list items, and we have checkout details that have double values, and then we have menu item ID that have like, this is basically the menu item ID is pretty much same as the uh, food item, sorry. So you can see that it's pretty much same. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna delete this because we already have that, and instead I'm gonna use menu item as food item. So now we have this object being created, and now we'll go to the food API section. Now over here you have this post section that says post. Now we will be saying get, and over here we'll be using same slash cart, suspend function, get cart, and along with that we'll be using response something like this. And since we don't want to add anything, we are not gonna pass anything to this other than the to header, so it should be something like this. Okay, now these things are, this is ready, And what we need to do is that we need to implement our cart. So to implement the cart, we need to go to the our feature section, and inside the feature section, let's just create another package, call it cart. Okay, and over here we need two things. One is cart screen is going to be a file, make it a composable function. Cart screen, it's gonna take nav controller as a controller, and I think you don't need anything else, so I'll just keep it like this. Second thing that we need to do is that we'll be making another Kotlin class and make it cart view model. This is going to be a class, and it's gonna be using inject constructor, and we'll extend it from the view model class, and we'll also make it a hilt view model. So these are a couple of things. Other than that, we need a couple of more stuff over here, and that is basically using sealed classes for UI state. Like we have a loading, we have cart UI state, and we also need a data class success case that is gonna be cart response. So that is one thing. Another thing would be using on checkout button. Definitely we need that. Along with that, we might want like say object show error dialog, right? I think that's pretty much the two things that we need. And now over here we will be using private wall UI state is equals to mutable state flow of cart UI state as loading, and you can make it something like this. Then we'll be using private wall event mutable shared flow of cart event, and we'll using wall event as shared flow. And the next thing is that we will be using function increment quantity, but this time what we need is that we need a cart item as a and updated quantity and the quantity as well. So these are the two things. The updated quantity that we require will be using the same, or let's just make it, yeah, function increment quantity for that specific item that we will be using. And the last one is one more thing could be the remove item. Yes. And then we have a function that says the checkout. So I think that there's going to be a couple of things that we need. Think that's pretty much that we want. Or let's just do one more thing. Let's call it wall. Yeah. Okay. So now that's pretty much we have over here. We'll get over here inside this specific section. And if I go to Figma, you will see that the cart screen that we have is pretty much something like this. So let's just get started one by one. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to create a header. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna composable function header view, okay, and that is gonna be uh card. Make it a card header view so that it's not confusing. Okay, now inside of that we have a raw. Okay, that row contains an, let's call it an icon button, and on click it's gonna be making on back, right? So let's call it on back. Then over here we'll be using an image and gonna be using painter resource r dot drawable dot, let's import the drawable dot back button. Description is going to be null. So that's one thing. Then the next thing that we need to do is that we need to have um, a text that says cart. Okay. And if you look into that, the title is pretty much like a medium. So we'll be using the medium title for that. Say title medium. So that's basically what we need. Yeah, we don't have any third item in this specific section, so we'll use the spacer for that. Okay, now over here what we need to do is that we can say modifier fill max width, that's important, and we'll say horizontal arrangement as space between, so that it's like get those spaces. And now over here what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna say column and call that header, and on back button I'm gonna say pop back stack. That's one thing, right? Now the next thing that we need to do is that we need a spacer modifier dot size, and that size is going to be 16.dp. That is for spacer. The next thing is that we need a column. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna create a lazy column, and that lazy column is basically something that will help me create all these things, but this will only be shown when there is like some data. Okay, so for that, what we need to do is that we need to do a couple of things. First thing is that we'll say wall uh, UI state is equals to view model. We don't have a view model, so we'll be using view model as cart view model is equals to hilt view model. Now we'll say view model dot UI state dot collect a state with live view cycle. And now we'll say when, sorry, not over here. Uh, Over here we'll say when, we'll say UI state dot value means that when it's like its loading state, we'll be using a progress indicator. We'll make sure modifier. Okay, and just one more thing, we'll also use that for this as well. In case of success, we have the data, so we'll use the data. In case of error, we'll show error. Also, we'll make a retry button as well. So we'll create text, body medium, and we'll also have a button like this. Okay, and it will say retry. Okay, and let's just make sure that we have a column for that as well. And we'll make sure that it's centrally aligned everything. So that is also important to make everything centrally aligned. Now let's just take that lazy column and get over here this section. What do we have left? There's an else branch. Yeah, for nothing we don't need anything. So yeah. Okay, now inside that we'll say items, and now we'll say data dot items, which is basically cart items. Now over here we will be using cart item view. We don't have a cart item view, so that's one thing. Also, there will be one more item in the bottom of the list, and that is basically going to be the uh, checkout details view. Okay, so that is important to use. Okay, so let's just implement those composable function cart item view that basically contains a cart item. Now, what we need to do is that if you look into the design, we have a image, like we have a raw kind of a thing, and inside that we have what what I'm gonna do is that I'll be using a column raw, like a raw, and then we have a column of rows. So there will be three rows, and I'll set it up accordingly. So let me just get started with that. So now what I'm gonna do is that I'll just get rid of that. First thing that I need is that I have a raw which is there, and the first thing out of that raw is going to be a async image. Okay, and from over here what I'm going to do is the cart item dot menu item id dot image url. So that is going to be helping me with the image. I'm going to pass null, and other than that we need to do a couple of things. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say modifier dot 62, let's make it 82 dp. Okay, and I'll be using clip round corner shape 16.dp. Let's make it 12. Okay, and content scale should be crop, so that it basically crops that. Then we get a spacer. That spacer is going to be at least 8 dp. I'm gonna use 12, and now I'm gonna use a column. Okay, so the column is basically gonna contain one row to the top, then a text, simple text that contains, I'm gonna say cart item dot menu item id dot description, but the max lines are gonna equals to 1. Also the color is gonna equals to gray, and then I also need one more raw. Okay, and that's basically gonna be helping me with something more. Okay, now the first one is gonna be using a text that is going to be the name, and that is going to be title medium. Okay, and then we have a spacer of size, but instead of size I'm gonna use weight as 1f, and then this last specific section is gonna be icon button. Okay, and that icon button gonna take um, icon, I'm gonna say icons dot filled dot close. Okay, and also let's just make it a null, and also let's use tint as material theme dot color scheme dot primary. Okay, so now the first row got a title, and it will like take all the spaces and just make sure that once there is like nothing left, the rest of the space will be taken by the weight, and then we'll have a icon button on the right section of the raw. Then we have a text that is going to be a single line in between that specific section, and at the last what we need is that we need a pricing for that. That is going to be title medium, and the colors should also be material theme dot color scheme dot primary, and then we have a weight over here. This is important. We need to have a button, like a section, button section, that basically should have a plus and minus button, like we have something over here, this specific section. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna copy this. Okay, and create a composable function food item counter, and use something like this. Now you can see that it's complaining about a lot of things. One thing is the counter, so I'm gonna say on counter increment, and then on counter decrement and account. So these are the a couple of things that I will be using over here. Let's call this on counter should be decrement, and that is going to be on counter increment dot invoke. We also need to make sure that we invoke these. Okay. Okay, now over here from where I copied this, where did I copy it from? This section, right? I'll use this, and pretty much this will help you with all these things. I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm gonna use food counter. Okay, and now over here what we can do is that we can pass something as a counter, and then over here now we know that what we are gonna do is that we'll say view model over here, let's call it on. So on increment, on decrement, and on count, on remove. So this is going to be on increment. So this is going to be on increment dot invoke. I'm going to pass the cart item and the quantity. Then again, the next thing is going to be on decrement, cart item and the quantity. And then we have this cross button over here, icon button. Let's use this over here like that. Okay. And now you can see that it will be giving us a couple of more functionality that we'll be using, and we have almost everything already implemented. Now the next composable that we want is a checkout detail view, and for that I'm going to again say composable function, and that is going to be what is the model that I had. Let's say checkout details model. Let's say checkout details. I'm going to say column, create one more composable and call it function checkout row item, title and a value, and I think that's pretty much what it should be doing. Till max width. Yeah, so now it's pretty much the title, then we have a text for the value. Yeah, I think that's pretty much okay. So there is just one more thing that let me just add. Okay, so I think that should be enough. Now over here we'll say something as, call it as subtotal, value as checkout details dot subtotal, and for now currency I'm going to use USD. So that's one thing. Then we got tax, then we got delivery fee, and last is going to be total. And we can also, like, if you want, you can add more details to this, but I think let's make it total amount. Okay. There might be some padding, at least the vertical padding, if not horizontal. That is going to be 4 dp, and let's make it a column, put it inside that. Okay, and also I'm gonna use a vertical divider like this. Okay, and now over here we will be using sorry, data dot checkout details. So that's pretty much what we should be getting. Now for this card screen, what we need to do is that we need to go to main activity over here, create another composable. Okay, and we need to make sure to create a cart object for that, and we'll just use this simple, straightforward. Now we don't have a cart, so we'll go over here to food details section, create a serializable data, sorry, not data, make it an object cart. This will basically help with this. Let's just import that. Right now we don't have any other way to like implement to like check that, so I'm gonna get over here to the food details section. Now over here when it says go to cart, what I'm gonna say is that I'm gonna say navigate, and over here I'll be using cart navigation. Okay, and I think that should be enough. In term of design, let's make it title small, title large should be enough. Okay, so we have it like, okay, so now the UI part is done, and now what we need to do is that we need to get the cart section. So we'll get say function get cart, and before that let's make it an init, call it get cart. And now over here what we will be doing is that we'll say view model scope dot launch. Now over here we'll be saying, yeah, pretty much something like that, not exactly, but yeah. So that's one thing. And now over here, call it wall res is equals to safe API call food API. We don't have a food API, so let's call it food API. Now we should have it. We'll call it food API dot get cart. Now we'll just simply use this cart data. Okay, we are using, okay, yeah, just make sure that you properly manage the responses that you have. And now else we will be using, also use something like an error occurred. So that is the first part. Okay, now let's just try and see if what we have implemented is actually working like we expected. Okay, now let's just get to the item, try to add the cart, and you can see we have something. Okay, so to some extent we have something. It's definitely not how we want it, but it looks like we are somewhat close to what we were implementing or we were trying to implement. Okay, so we'll go back to our cart screen. Now the cart row item, so the checkout row item is that is body medium. Let's call it title medium, so it looks slightly bigger. That's one thing. And since I'm not adding anything, I'm gonna add a padding, at least the horizontal padding of at least 16 dp, so that it like leave that some space from there. And this will basically help me shrink that card section horizontally. We have increased the sizes, and now we need to make sure that this button goes in front of that, or like the text go in front of that, and things like that. So what I'm gonna do is that we'll get to the checkout cart view item, right? And now inside this section we have this I button. I'm gonna say modifier dot size let's make it a 24 dp rather than a 48 dp. And now over here, this is important, that we need to make sure that we add a modifier. So sorry, we add a vertical alignment as center vertically to the rows, the two rows that we have, so that the text and the items that we have doesn't go beyond that. And also the text is going to be body small this time, because we don't want that big. Now let's just try again and see if this gets adjusted according to what how we want it. Okay, let's just get over here, go to card. Okay, much better. I would say the things are adjusted accordingly, according to what we wanted. We might want to add some spacing, beneath, like to every item, and also we would like to add some spacing in between these two items as well. So let's just do that. You know that we have this row, and this row has like no spacing in between. So I'm gonna say modifier dot size, and at least a dp of space should be there. And we also will make it vertical arrangement should be arrangement dot center, so that they are like centrally aligned. And last thing that we would like to do is to add some padding, at least vertical padding, to be a dp between each item. And now when you run it, it will look much better. There will be some spacing in between them, and things like that. Right, you can see that it looks much better now. We have this each item, and like everything is clickable as well. We need to add some more spacing to this, so that it, and also we want to add a sign in the start of that. Like we need to this like currency doesn't looks that good, so we need to make sure that we use a proper formatting for that. So let's just do that as well. And so for that, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna say you need to go to utils, get over here, create a new package, call it utils, create a class, call it string utils. Okay, make it an object. Now over here, create a function, format currency, that is going to get a double from us. Don't, no, this is not how we want it. We want wall currency format, right? Then we need to currency format dot currency is equals to currency, and will format accordingly. Now this will basically help us. So now we get over here to the checkout raw items, and now you see that we are getting this string. So instead of string, I'm gonna make it a double, so that you don't have to add these things. Let's just get rid of all these. Okay, and now over here, this is going to be string utils.format. I'm going to pass value. This will basically help with the formatting of that currency. And let's just rerun the code once again. This time the card should show a proper formatting. Now you can see that the formatting is good. Other section looks good. Cart text goes a little up. It should be somewhat over here, but we can fix that. Okay, so that's one part of this. And one more thing that I would like to do over here is that, since you know this is a column, right? And inside that, let's create one more thing. Modifier dot weight as 1f, and if UI state dot value is success, means now the value is successful, we'll create a button that says checkout, and we'll set a modifier for that. Okay, so now I have added, basically when the state is successful, we'll show a button in the bottom. Okay, now let's just run this. So we have something in the bottom over here. Okay, let's just go this, add to cart, go to cart, and now you can see that we have a cart button. This, there is like less spacing in between that. We can add some spacing to this as well, so that it leaves some space from top and bottom. And then as soon as like you keep add more item, it will be just creating a list out for that, and it will go to the bottom of that. So that's pretty much, that's what we want. When you click on the checkout, what we are gonna do is that we'll take the user to one more screen in between. That will be an address screen where user can add an address, and after user input address, we will set up the will basically create the order. But now one more thing that we want over here is that we need to implement this plus minus buttons over here right now, because we haven't implemented that yet. So to implement that, what we need to do, what we need to do is that we need to go to cart view model over here, and now you can see we have these things. Okay, now before implementing anything like the increment and decrement and the remove and checkout and these things like that, we will be basically implementing these three in this specific video. So what we need to do is that we need to go to our backend code, and once you go to the backend code over here in the inside the cart routes, you can see that we have a patch call over here as well, and delete call. So these are the two things that we will be using. One is for updating the quantity and one is for deleting the item, right? So we'll be using these two. So how we are going to use that, let's just get it implemented. So we'll get over here to the food API section, and now over here inside that, what we want to do is that we need to create an add patch. Okay, and this is going to be again slash cart, nothing else, the spend function, something like this. And okay, and over here the response is more like a generic response. So what I'm going to do is that I'll create a new Kotlin class that is going to be a data class. Let's call it generic message response, and what it contains is that it just contain a message. So if we go to the postman, you can also check it over here that it will be just a message. So this is basically a generic message response we'll be using for this. Let's more call it generic message response for that. And along with that, we will also be using the request object should be different. So it should be update cart item request. Okay, so get over here, you get create a new model, and that is again going to be a data class, and it should require two things. One is the quantity and the other one is the food item. So just make sure that the object that you're using, the it's same as what we have in the backend. So if I go over here into the update cart, it's cart item ID. So you need to make sure that you use the cart item ID correctly. So this is the request that we need to use, and we can just import that. Now the last one is going to be the delete functionality for that, and for that we'll be using path variable. So for that, what you need to do is that you can call it delete cart item, create a path variable cart item ID, and it's going to be string, and it's also going to be a generic message response for that. Now this is pretty much what we would be implementing, or we will be implementing. So to make the implementation, what we will be doing is that we'll go to the cart view model back over here. Now, like these two things are gonna use a simple method, and let's call it function update item quantity. Okay, and this is basically the quantity that we will be using, and over here we will say view model scope dot launch, and uh, over here like pretty much something like that. Update cart, we need a request for that. We will just remove that and call it update cart item request. Over here you need a cart item dot id for yours, and then also we need to add the pass the quantity that you have like received, and along with that you'll also need something like this. Since these error messages are like not gonna be like this, we will be using this for a total as a total separately. Will not be adding any sort of events other than the loading. So okay, we'll say UI, sorry, underscore UI state dot. There is something wrong, I think. Oh yeah, okay, I think that's why it was creating an issue. I'm gonna say UI state dot value is equals to loading. That's one thing. And once the loading is done, and once that is like success, upon success, we'll just update the get cart request so that it makes another cart. And in term of error, what we need is that we need to create some more events. So I'll say object on cart on quantity update error. Okay, and one is going to be on item remove error. So like in case of error, we will be just using it like this. So that's how I think we should be doing, right? And also, now that is important. Like if it's a get cart and it will just make a web call, and upon that it will update the result. But over here, since this is just like the request that failed, we need the previous state of the cart, right? So for that, what I'm gonna do is that I'll create one more thing and call it wall cart response is equals to, sorry, let's make it something like this. Now this cart response upon success is gonna be equals to res dot data. Okay, let's make it a var, and let's make it a private as well so that it's not accessible outside. Now this is basically done, and now when like there is an error, in that case what we will do is that we'll set that state back value is equals to success. Okay, and we'll use that response for that as well. Okay, and we'll be doing the same thing over here for this as well. And since like these both cases are same, so we'll just get rid of that, because in case of error and in case of normal it's gonna be the same. And now this is gonna happen for update. So now over here what I'll do is that I'll say update item quantity cart item, and that is going to be cart item dot quantity minus 1. I think I don't need this quantity, so let's just get rid of this quantity because it doesn't make sense to be removing it from there, right? But yeah, again, like there should be some check. So like if the quantity is already equals to 0, will not do anything. Um, and also if something like this, if it's like equals to 5, will not do anything, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what we will be doing for increment and decrement, and it will do the same thing. And now we'll pretty much use the same functionality for remove as well, but only this is going to be different. So we'll just say delete cart item, and rather than the request, we will be passing just the cart item dot id. So we will pass that, and upon success, we'll update the cart. Upon failure, we will be using on cart on item remove error, so that it just update that accordingly. So yeah, that's how it should be, like it's how we should do it. And now we'll go to the cart screen again. Now over here you see that we have not yet implemented the event, so I'm gonna say launched effect. That is going to be true for key, and then I'll say view model dot event dot late, sorry, what was that, collect latest. Okay, now over here we'll say view dot it. So this is for on item remove, this is on item success error, this is on checkout error, and this is on checkout success. So the checkout success I think is not there. Quantity update error is important. What else do we have? Show error dialog again is there. I'll say else, like this. Okay, now we need to, we don't want to navigate anywhere, so we'll not be navigating anywhere. It's, let's just keep these things the way they are. What we will do is that we'll do something else. So now for item remove, we'll show a dialog for update error, we'll show some sort of other dialog, and then we'll show for normal error, we'll be using an error. So basically what most of the time, like the mostly that we are gonna do is that we'll show an error for all these. So all these three cases, what we will be doing is that we will be showing an error message, right? Yeah, okay. So now what I'll do is that I'll say wall show error dialog is equals to remember mutable state of false. Okay, and now we'll go to the, go down in that specific composable. We'll say if show error dialog dot value is true. This means that we need to make a modal bottom sheet. On dismiss request, we'll say, on dismiss request, we'll say show error dialog dot value equals to false. And now over here we'll say basic dialog. Okay, now the title and the description should come from the view model. So say view model dot error title, right? And this is going to be error message. And on click, we'll just hide that. And we need to make sure that we opt in for that. So yeah, that's how it should be done. We don't have these variables, so we'll just create member variables for this. So that is going to be a var and error title error message should also be there. Right now over here in these error cases, for example, over here when this is this error, we'll say the error title is equals to cannot update quantity, and error message should be something like this. In case of delete, we'll get over here, we'll say cannot delete, right? Okay, so these kind of errors should be there. And what else? I think we don't need to pass these values. Okay, okay. Right, so I think we have pretty much implemented what we wanted. We definitely want to that show error value over here for to true. So yeah, so let's just try to check if what we did is actually working as we want it. Okay, so now the code is running. We have this. We'll add an item to get into a card because we don't have a section. Now, let's say we have this 12 pieces. Let's just create to like reduce it to like lesser number, and you can see that it's been there. Now let me just try to remove this zero item because it doesn't make sense. So let's just create that, and you can see now it's deleted, and I can remove that as well. So so basically, the functionality that we wanted to implement over here is basically working. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what we want. What we can do is that this cross button still looks quite big. So maybe we can slightly reduce that. And to do that, so we'll get over here into the card section. And this is our cart view item. This is the icon button. Size is 24. I think we can do the same thing over here for this. Maybe the image can be slightly smaller. So let's just try with an 18 dp because I want that image to be a little slow. So that is basically one of the major turn off when I look into that. It's quite prominent. It should be less smaller. Okay, got this. We got our product. We got this. Go to cart, add to cart. Now it looks much better, right? You can see that it's quite smaller and looks pretty cool. So yeah, I think that was it for today. It's a long video, but I think this feature needed to be implemented this way. So yeah, thank you so much for watching the video. In the next video, we will finalize on how the orders work. So till then, happy coding. Bye. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please like the video, comment down below and share the video with your friends. For similar content, you can subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram, and if you have any queries, you can join my Discord server where we discuss different kind of things. So thank you so much for watching the video. Have a great day. Bye.